Okay, I'm Adam Jinrakai. And once the One Piece manga comes back from break next week, and I'm going to be including chapter reviews and analysis every week, so I figured what better way to do that than to do one mega review and review pretty much every chapter since 1000. And I say review, but kind of just quick analysis, touch on, and have a couple of videos and parts, probably 3 or 4, just getting us from pretty much chapter 1000 to chapter 1053 where we're at now, so when the series comes back, we can just jump right into it. So maybe a better title for this video would be a Mega Retrospective on One Piece since breaching the 1000 chapter mark. Now obviously the 1000 mark was a huge deal for One Piece, for the manga, for everything, for Shonen Jump. I think for all the fans it was a moment we all were really looking forward to, and it was a great Christmas present and all that stuff coming early. Chapter 1000, there's a lot of things with the 1000 number, and I think that there's a big deal going on with maybe the last 1000 years in the One Piece story maybe being a reign of something like a devil or something that we haven't really quite thought of maybe yet, or viewed it in a certain way. But that reign, the ending of it started in chapter 1. But the 1000 years that we've known about, I think there's a lot of things, being crazy, including, a huge chance that the Void Centuries are some crazy abstract voiding of the prototypes, the 2 prototypes that came beforehand for One Piece, and then now we have the actual story, so those histories have been erased and voided. I think there could be a play on that, and that chapter 1000, the Shonen Jump cover with this 1000 Seas and stuff like that, just really gives me lots of vibes of the chapter title, the chapter numbers not only being the 1000 mark, but also kind of maybe referencing more than just that. And we know there's a lot of time with this histories, and we find out Nika in this arc and all these things. And I really wonder just how far that 1000 mark extends. And I really wanted to do these chapter reviews because it was kind of going to be an easy way to get out a bunch of theories connected to recent events and all these things. And this is kind of the first one. I've seen a few videos kind of connecting Wano to maybe the Gorosei and the World Elders and all this stuff. But I think that's in part true. I think they're all related to that Pangaea Castle and the Sacred Mary Joa. And in chapter 1000, we get a huge clue to their connection, because we get these little Nolan head chestnut pineal gland things all over the steps of the Onigashima skull. I think the idea that this place, with the crosses on top and the ceiling and all that stuff on the stairs, that this whole thing might be leading up, but I know it seems like we're leading up, but I think it's all kind of dragging Luffy down away from his goal in some way. But I'm not going to touch on that too much here, but this idea that these same symbols are present here and in Skypiea, and considering the only other place we could really find these things are from Nolan, who seemed to come from some weird kingdom, and then the symbol is all over the iconography of Skypiea where he explored and then was put to death for talking about and lying, whatever. The symbol's there in Skypiea, here in Wano, and they're in Mary Joa all over the empty throne, or the stairs to the empty throne. I really, to me, it's all a big sign that that head chestnut symbol pineal gland thing might be a false lead, and ultimately leading towards nothing, or at least nothing in the sense of what we think things are supposed to be or equate to. And also the fact that I think it's a whole thing being played with the Nika image that we're given, and maybe the idea that this highest energy form could be turned upside down as a weapon, I think is one meaning that's getting played with all around, but just one of them. But in my opinion, to me, Wano kind of looks like a side view of a brain. And I think that maybe the head, the separation of head and body and all these things, I think is being played with, but we'll touch on that later. All in all, to me, it's just a big, connection clue of there's a lot more going on. I mean, obviously, the final arc's starting, and it's starting in Wano. That has to be a big deal, but I think there's even more going on with that stuff. And in this kind of review analysis thing, especially the chapters that are, almost 2 years old now, I'm not going to touch on and harp on so much, just got quick little stuff. I'm not going to touch on the Ace flashback and all those things, but I really loved this shot of them, the Yonko, or Big Mom and Kaido meeting the supernovas and all those stuff, and this is just one of my favorite spreads of all time. It's my favorite spread in the chapter 1000 for sure. And of course the Goku parallels, loved that. Really enjoyed the end of this chapter with the red rock. And to me, like, one of the crazy things with all these learning One Piece words and everything is, like, Loki. The word Loki has a lot of origins, and one of them being Logi, which meant flame or blaze in Old Norse, and then basically a ton of words that meant fire, flame, or lightning, or white light, or to shine. But there's also a lot of arguments that the origins of the word come from words that meant lock, or to turn or bend. So all of Wano kind of being a needed event to get, or maybe unlock, Luffy to the Gear 5 point, I think could be kind of at play here. And I think the opposite side of that is also this idea that Luffy has been trapped for a long time, going back to that 1,000-year thing I was going on about in the beginning of the video. Lots of stuff I'll go on in future videos, but just this idea that perhaps this could be, you know, something to unlock or something to ultimately be the last step of locking something, I think could be, ultimately, is what could be getting played with on multiple levels here in the story. And I think that it's all a big clue maybe to, not that he's Loki for sure 100%, but in some aspect that idea is getting played with here. Especially with Luffy's red rock and that being a mythical bird and all those things. Chapter 1000, great chapter. Then chapter 1001, I think we get a lot of big-time clues for future powers and power-ups past what we've seen in this arc. I always love seeing Killer. I think he's a huge Talking Heads Psycho Killer reference. The song, and one of the big things they always say in the song is fa, 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 fa. It's always his laugh. Here we get that famous shot of all the people who have surpassed Kaido, supposedly, and all these things. I know that the general consensus from Oda, whatever, is that some spikes are spikier than other spikes, and those are what hurts Luffy the most. I always find it interesting when he gets hurt by those type of weapons and stuff, and it always kind of makes me think, like, he's so rubbery. How on earth does his fists become hard to punch people? But whatever. I think that this Zoro save is a big time clue to perhaps him having a very similar ability to the Sharingan from Naruto, which I know that's not going to be a popular opinion, but I think that a lot of things are very similar, much more than we've ever thought of with Naruto and with Dragon Ball and with pretty much every series in Shonen Jump. Zoro's missing eye having a Sharingan on there, I don't think is just a meme. And I love how in this chapter it really shows to me what I think. I think we're told a lot of lies in the series, and a lot of truths and half-truths and things, and that Marineford line about Luffy's power to get people on his side, I think that's a little bit stretching what is going on. I think more directly he's able to influence reality, and I think we see that here in just his actions kind of influencing those around him with strong wills even. Doesn't seem to matter. They all are immediately kind of taken to, okay, I have to prove I'm just as manly as this person for some reason. I think that's a big deal.
Savage! I'm a savage! Oh! I'm a savage! Whatever I want, I'm going to get! Whatever I want, I have to get!
And then I think we get, I love this shot where we get the cool powers. I'm really interested in Kid's powers. We're going to touch more on it, you know, future video and future of this video. But what he's able to do with magnets, I think, is a huge secret to the whole series. And the way the skull looks here, and the way we see it later, love these powers. And it's weird to me. This whole scene kind of strikes me almost like a joke, like that Law's even included. Now I'm saying it's a joke because Law, I think, on paper probably has the most, like, some of the strongest power sets you could possibly have. It doesn't seem like he's using them to me so much here to his full capacity. For some reason, the rocks do seem to hurt Kaido. Now I wonder why that is. Not hurt at least, but he does make a huge noise screaming when he's hit by them. So some discomfort is given to him on the same level, maybe not the same level, but at least pain-wise, he's feeling it, you know, at least pain in this image just from the rock. So that's just weird to me. I'm wondering if things that Law maybe is moving around with stuff, if he's able to, if they're just naturally influenced by hockey in some way, or with something imbued with something that's able to hurt Kaido. And then, of course, we get this great spread to end it. For me, I really wanted, like I said, make this channel about asking the right questions and kind of bringing up new ideas. Looking at this spread, it's amazing to me that all this stuff is taking one massive step towards becoming the Pirate King. Yet, none of this shit was mentioned on page 1 with Goldie Roger when it was as execution. I would honestly say, for probably 400-500 chapters of the manga, to become Pirate King, none of this stuff was needed. It's almost like it was added to the story. I am not saying that this is a retcon or that it was not in the plan to add it, but I do think that something. It's amazing how much the definition of Pirate King and what exactly its job title is and all it entails seems to change every couple of years. I do think it's natural that evolves and stuff with the story, but I think there's a lot more going on, which I'm going to be touching on in my Fisher King video, which I'm hoping to have out, very soon. I'm working on it behind the scenes on top of all the other videos. Then we have chapter 1002, and this is more the fight on top of the Onigashima skull. We kind of get the Kaido more unleashed here, obviously, but I really liked the panel layout and direction that Oda did for this rooftop battle to start with. And nothing was too focused on. It was all very fast. We got a lot of stuff real quickly, but I think it did kind of touch on enough stuff, okay, I can see they're all a little bit stronger now. And one of the principles of what Oda does with his symbolism is his battles are always referencing and predicting and foreshadowing and all this stuff, tons of different things outside of just what the battle is, okay? So we get the idea of Kaido getting thrown down here, okay? We see Law attacking his heart, that's what we see. And then the very next page, we get a killer reference. And I do think that Mr. Morg has some great videos, has some great videos about Killer and Kid and all this stuff. And I do think a great way to break Killer would be break Kid, break him, emotionally, spirit-wise, would be to kill his first mate Killer. I think there's lots of ways that could be done, and I think there's lots of things that could happen with all that stuff. The most interesting thing outside that to me with this next part is that it seems like using sound waves, he's able to hurt Kaido. Now, I wonder if that's because devil fruits have something to do with sound waves, or if it is penetrating his armor and hurting his insides or whatever, with just sound waves or whatever. But I wonder if it's more devil fruit related on Kaido's end about what's getting hurt here. Then we get more of the Sharingan Zoro techniques, cutting fire. And then we get a pretty interesting clue about what is strong with Zoro right now. Or not strong, but what is perhaps different. Both Big Mom and Kaido focus on the sword, that he has Enma's sword. And then we get a cool, one of the best, I just saw in the anime too, it seems like it was really super cool. I don't watch a lot of the anime of stuff. I think I watched the Marineford arc, and then some choice episodes. I have watched like the first 100 recently, because just for other stuff. But I've not really watched the anime, but I do plan to once Wano's over. Actually, not once Wano's over, just sometime soon I'm going to start the Wano arc on the anime, because the anime just looks stellar right now. Now, looking at chapter 1003, this one really at the cover page a little bit. We get a poison on the door, we get cacti in the back, and we get a scorpion. All of this stuff is, you have to check out my Bing Saki video for more of what I think is going on with cactuses. The idea that cactuses start feeding, they start the process of eating the energy they have stored overnight at dawn, I think is going to be kind of a relevant play on what's happening pretty soon once the chapters come back up. And that's kind of why I wanted to do these reviews, in part, just to, like I said, get a lot of more recent, about to happen type theories out there. Even looks like she's kind of drinking a Starbucks cup, just with sugar. All sorts of clues here. Maybe she has a chrysanthemum in her hand there. I'm not quite sure. Those crystal ball flowers. And then the chapter opens on Luffy tuckering himself out, beating on Kaido. Seems like later on in the fight that Luffy does. It seems to be implied later in the fights and in the newest Road to Laugh Tale that Luffy seems to gain power from laughing in some form, almost like a crazy, weird Joker type thing. He seems to laugh and gain power. So he runs out of energy here and is completely drained and needs time to recover. Now, this always gives me Super Saiyan 3 vibes, like when Vegeta had to save Goku. The rest of the chapter is pretty much keeping Luffy away from being eaten, which I think is a big overall theme and deal. But right now, it's more literal with Kaido, obviously. And then we get a very obvious, straight up confirmation to me from Kaido that a lot of what seems to be crazy about Zoro power-wise right now is from the Enma sword. And they all, both Kaido and Big Mom, both think, oh, the source of this strange haki is Odin's sword. Okay, I think the idea of an evil sword or a cursed sword that might be possessed or looking for the right owner or literally the right arm to wield it on a body is very literal with a lot of what maybe Zoro has coming up endgame wise. But right now, I think that all of Wano was kind of that sword deciding on at least the arm of Zoro to be what's going to eventually be its wielder, whatever that means, which I'll touch on in future videos. And then this idea back to the cover page and the chapter title is "The Night Reflected on a Go Board." And obviously the battle by the CP0 is being choreographed and documented or whatever for themselves by the pieces on the Go board. I think there's a lot deeper stuff. I touch on more in my Bing Saki video. If you want, please check it out. The idea of old chess games on the computer, one of the oldest forms of video games that exist, as far as I know. When you would play the game and you would make a great move that would sacrifice one of your own pieces, it was called a brilliant move. And the best kind of, if you ever watch Big Brother, I mean, my wife and I watch Big Brother all the time and all, that kind of crap, reality TV, the best pawns are the ones that have no idea they're about to be sacrificed. And I think a lot of Toki's quote is referring to that, and on a very base level, it seems like there was a lot of lies going on to get Luffy to where he is now, at least having eaten whatever fruit he ate, and he does seem to have to die to activate that, but we'll touch on that later. But this game board idea of the whole world being a game board and these invisible hands that really control the world moving and dictating things, I think is what is overall being this chapter opens and closes on pretty much. And I'm from the U.S. and all that stuff, but I have some friends in Europe, and one of them told me before that there's a famous saying in Europe that when two people fight, the third person wins. And I really get that vibe here of, obviously CP0's please let these pirates take out each other, take out as many as you want. I feel like there's a lot of things going on about kind of blockages in the One Piece world that don't really know they're blockages, but they end up essentially being sheriffs for territories of the Grand Line and the New World. We know that because literally since Rogers died, nothing has happened, and even more than that, it seems like for the most part, no one's even moved. And I really think that is by design. By Oda's design, but by the Marines' design. Someone behind the scenes has made sure that no one has progressed, at least since Roger was executed. And this idea of designs is even hinted on at the end of the chapter. We get a hidden, this is a cool new Kaido design, but you don't get to see it. I think it's all just, Oda's very funny, and I think he's kind of hitting on here. We even got on the top of the page, there's like the 3 doors are the only things left, and doors and portals, and all these things I think are getting touched on here of just this idea that things are happening on the surface, but underneath, behind these doors, behind closed doors, there's real power and decisions being made and happening in the One Piece world. And this is just kind of the pirate games to make sure they don't bother us, I feel like, for most of the rest of the world for some reason. Then we have chapter 1004, the Kibi Dango, and I think this is another cover page that's huge, this idea of overstuffing some place or mouth with rumble balls or fake fruits or whatever. We even get the door thing touched on in the back again, the end of the last chapter, as well as some fantastic mushroom references and teapot things, and this is the last time I'm going to say it, but I touch on a lot of this stuff in my Bing Saki video, and this idea of Wano being a brew or a teapot. There's even some hidden shadow fruit, it looks like, underneath the table with the pumpkin stuff from Skypiea. And we mentioned earlier, it seems like there's a lot of connections between Wano and Skypiea. Well, here's a pumpkin thing right here with some flames and candles, all sorts of crazy stuff here, including a monkey who seems to be obsessed with pirates. Now, chapter 1004 starts with Tama, and she's fighting, and we get another clear indication of her dream of not wanting to be hungry and how she should be allowed to have rice too. And then we see some characters immediately say Roger. Now, the idea that the meaning of Roger means received in many languages and radio and all this stuff, the idea of her, almost like her wish or desire being received here, I think in a lot of crazy ways, Luffy equates to a shooting star, like a when you wish upon a star type deal, and he grants wishes that way. Obviously, we hear at the end of this, the end of this arc when he's beating Kaido, his whole everyone eats thing. I really wonder if that was ingrained there, because we know this idea that devil fruits now have wills of their own. Well, I wonder if Tama's influence has a little bit of her will. So was every single person who had eaten a smile fruit in Wano somehow subconsciously also wishing to not be hungry and still eat, and that also helped Luffy gain power here? I'm not sure. Just a question. And I think we know, there's a lot of ideas around about Pluton being a battleship and all, or a warship. And to me, I think Oda is always playing with words, and he's like Loki with the wordplay and the twister tongues and everything. And this idea that a warship would be powered by worship, I think could be a very real Starman power thing.
Who are you?
Life is too short for questions.
Well, what are you? I can see you're trying to invent something. Who are you?
Better yet, explain yourself.
I can't explain myself, I'm afraid, because I'm not myself, you see. Anyway, explanations take such a dreadful time.
I can explain you.
Well, oh, shit, you didn't turn the right page. I'm sorry.
Then obviously the rest of the chapter, Roger that some more. Everyone's taking orders from Tama and they're starting the war's starting to turn or whatever. Some great shots of Nami fighting and using powers and stuff, and then Frankie. And then the chapter ends on, what ends up kind of being a false lead with that. These ears here, I still am wondering who this person is. I don't know, is it just Toki? I'm not 100% sure. But we know that these little mouse things are cyborgs. I think that would be obviously important later on, but some sort of a cyborg watching 10 people and keeping an eye out on 10 people. I think that this page is extremely loaded, and I will touch on it later in maybe a different video or whatever, but for this review, I think the idea of all that's going on right here relates back to the prototype, the secrets in that. Not the prototype, I'm talking about the Monsters one. The one that's officially canon to One Piece. We get another Sword in the Stone reference here, and it's a triangle thing, which, could be fire, could be the devil, could be all sorts of stuff with there. Just, great page. Then chapter 1005 is another hugely loaded cover called Devil Child. I kind of get the symbolism of a kid that just wants to eat everything. Kind of like, to me, the idea of light in the sun can be viewed lots of different ways. But this idea that the sun, everything it touches is illuminated and filled a little bit with light and radiation and all these things. You could view it as consuming things in a lot of ways to me, I think. And we get some teacup references and some drinking milk and all these things. To me, this idea that is getting played with, that if something's main purpose is just to eat a bunch of stuff and its favorite thing is to eat and all this stuff, is that evil if it wants to eat the whole world? I mean, this whole world eater or ender thing, is that evil if that's they're in their nature, like a star or a sun colliding with Earth type deal? Is that evil of the celestial body, or is it just the lion eating the lamb on the largest scale possible? We're back to Sanji getting crucified with some webs. Back to my Bing Saki video. I really liked this Robin-chan save me scene. Then we clearly get everyone's noticing this stuff, but then Apu's powers being used. So almost the idea that these might be broadcasting information, and that information doing things could be related to me or whatever. Then we get a pretty cool sign of just how strong Marco might be. He's able to hold off King and Queen at various times, and even Marineford, most of the time he seemed to be handcuffed by those sea stone cuffs. So Marco, I think, could be a hidden, very strong character. Hopefully he stays, nice. And then we, it's not a new application of Robin's powers, but she definitely seems to her powers seem to be very similar to Luffy's sometimes. And here we get, pretty much the Gear 3 huge combined arm thing, but instead of, how Luffy does the rubber, hers are flower related or whatever. This idea that flowers become human limbs, I think is maybe something that could be touched on in some form, especially going back to that cover. You could view a lot of that as a tree and its roots kind of eating into the ground and light and consuming all of the things there. And we know that Katakuri is eating the devil fruit. And then the flower girl shows up, who we know has been referred to as a devil. I'm not saying Robin is bad, I'm not saying she's going to be in control of anything. Maybe something, we know all devil fruits I think all devil fruits have many more secrets than even close to what we've learned so far. The idea of them all having wills or influence or in some fashion, stuff like that. Robin not mean to be the devil, but her powers having a very sprouting and cancer-like growth effect. I think if it was used out of her control, could be extremely dangerous, especially in the wrong hands. And then when it comes to traitors in the One Piece world, I think that there's a lot going on. Brook, though, is just going to rip off the Band-Aid now. I think whatever is in the light yami fruit, all that stuff, I think that it has been leading a lot of things to Wano. And I'm gonna point it out a bunch of times in these chapters, but we get a lot of clues to the Gorosei and all this stuff about wanting to capture Nico Robin. And throughout this entire, after chapter 1000, Brook is constantly by Nico Robin. He's even holding her sometimes, saving her, all this stuff. But we know that he used to work for some kingdom, not government, but some weird kingdom, and he was a swordsman and all these weird things, and we know that he has some sort of recording device or receiver in his head. The idea of his top hat and all this stuff, I think is a symbol for, like a double-sided hat type thing, like a shadow hat, like a Mad Hatter type deal. I wonder who a lot of the orders for the Gorosei we're going to, because some of them seem to correlate to what happened with Luffy and stuff. Some of them, I think, correlated to other moments and events. And I'm not even saying that all the parts know different parts are working for each other. Brook could be, I don't think that Brook is actually working for the Gorosei or anything. It's just interesting to me how that lines up. I do think Nico Robin, making sure she's at the level she's at and where she ends up being, is ultimately what some entity in Brook is wanting. It just so happens to be the same kind of ideas maybe that the Gorosei have. I do think that Brook is acting out those things in a symbolic way and a literal way, but for different purposes. And that is securing Nico Robin onto his side. And then pretty much every member of the Straw Hat crew, when it comes down to it, I think that there's something going on with wishes in some form and dreams. And we obviously know they all have great wishes and dreams, but I think it's much crazier than what we've ever thought of. This is kind of, a great time, another good time for Robin, where she feels needed and accomplished, and thanks for counting on me and stuff like that. I think that maybe part of her, Super Saiyan transformation we're going to see is from the idea that someone believes and seems to love her right now for her being able to do what was done to her, which is saving someone. Then we get confirmation that these mice with the masks on are cyborgs, and to me they have the same teeth type motif that Brook's skull thing has too, but whatever. We get this very interesting little old lady, Shinobu, and I think that Oda plays with every fairy tale and every myth and all these things, and a wolf dressed as a little old lady, and these little old ladies that seem to guide all these figures we've seen at some point in their past towards something. I think we kind of get one of the biggest culminations of this arc, with Shinobu kind of being around to save and move Yamato and Momo around to make sure that certain things that maybe need to happen or need to be unlocked are unlocked with them. And then right after them, we see this idea of, we know there's lots of stuff going on later with Zoe and Zunisha and the idea of unlocking borders and all these things. And as soon as we kind of maybe hint on this hidden symbolic, hidden unlocking key thing, we then get a big woolly mammoth, blasting through the whole place. And we also know that he's fighting with people who are, the minks are right now, their main powers are unleashed and unlocked right now with the moon key, the moon. And the chapter ends on some pretty, like I said, I think that Brooke is hunting Nico Robin right now, and he is thrilled with the attitude that she has. And I think there could be lots of reasons for that, but I think most of all, the idea that she truly considers herself a Straw Hat pirate at this moment is maybe what Brooke's overall goal in some form was, but I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not. And the chapter notes talk about that the last page, that Black Maria's tattoo, is the word itself refers to the disasters that fall upon a man that once a woman likes him. In this context, it refers to how Black Maria captures and tortures the men she likes. To me, the idea of someone with ultimate power deciding the fate of the world in connection to what Luffy thinks and wants and does and feels could be good, could maybe be bad. Maybe it's not Luffy. Maybe it's someone else can influence that. But very, very dangerous. It's almost like covering over, the button to end the world. Very dangerous button to even have. I'd hate to be the person, have to be the person and talking in that person's ear to get them to not do it or do it. I think that there's a lot of things with Nico Robin about being heel and opening hell and all these things, and kind of start deciding to end the world and all these things based on who she's around and working with, and what Luffy maybe dictates and decides. Because when she joins the crew, she pretty much makes it clear that my life belongs to you now, Luffy. And now she doesn't act like that all the way with Water 7 and stuff and all these things, but I do think that maybe she is some sort of I don't know, creature, fruit, whatever, but she's something that is maybe deciding the fate of the world. And right now, it's tied to Luffy and his actions. I also think that's a big, reference to what Rayleigh was talking about with these, you might make different decisions when he's talking to Robin. Is maybe when Roger was doing all this, there was a similar situation and that person decided to wait a little longer too. Maybe Robin will make a different decision and decide to start the end of the world.
Doctor, there must be a cure, some formula. Similar to the old one.
Damn it, Captain. My dear Captain.
Not now, Doctor. Please.
Then for chapter 1006, I really like this Shonen Jump cover page. And to me, it kind of is highlighting too, it always strikes me weird which scars are like line scars like Luffy that look like stitches, and which scars seem to be maybe something, like a virus infection or something like Shanks's or Kid's. And the chapter kind of opens, I know it's a joke with Shinobu saying, can't there be a different way to hide Momo instead of by, the boobs or whatever, or by on her back, or against her skin. But I think it's just all kind of touching on this evil stepmother, evil grandmother type trope that is obviously doesn't want the son or daughter to move on with their lives or get married or whatever it is. I think this is a little, funny joke to that of just, okay, do you have to be touching so close? Do you have to be getting with the girl? All the things that, an evil stepmother type deal would be thinking for, Cinderella or something. Or like an overprotective mother. Then some cool shots of Pear Sparrow, and I really, he's the oldest Big Mom child, and I really wonder, I feel like he might be involved more in the story. I will say though, this page does seem to be a big Nether Sword in the Stone reference, and we even get the one in Onigashima, and then we get the ones with the minks, and I really think that there is something with Emu and the swords and all these crazy things being locked away or hidden in a sword. But we'll touch on that later. But for right now, this page, looking at it, the sword really reminds me of Shishio Makoto's sword from Rurouni Kenshin, and that how it had that ignitable fat on it, and it had like a saw type tip, and it could ignite and do explosions. And then we even get the sword on top is exploding like that. So I think a sword that can maybe cause explosions, or a weapon that had the power to do explosion type things like that, I think could be on the horizon. And then we get Marco's flames healing people, and as I mentioned before with Tom, I really wonder if there's something going on with maybe when powers are used on people, if they're able to be influenced or imbued by them or whatever. And I wonder if Marco's maybe planting some seeds and stuff here. And then at the end of the chapter, we get Hirogoro the flower and all of his, transformation and losing himself type stuff. And even his body here is half and half. And I really think, like I said with the chapter before with Robin, I think there's a lot of things going on with this, and maybe a hidden power inside being locked away and the flower type thing. To me, a lot of the One Piece stuff, if you've ever watched King of the Hill and you know how important mowing your lawn is. The idea of having to mow your lawn, I think, is getting played with a lot in One Piece. And the ultimate kind of version of a cancer or a flower that the whole world seems to hate, but there's not really a reason. All these things, you cut them out of your garden, are weeds. And when weeds grow in your garden and your grass, you always cut them and take them out and stuff. And it's like, are they really that much different than a regular flower? And I do think that's getting played with Robin and with Hyogoro and all that stuff. The idea of that growth not being inherently evil, but for some reason, definitely being a problem of some sort, is, I think, being played with here. And then Hyogoro has this fiery hairs holy light thing, and like I said before with Nico Robin, this idea that maybe she has some sort of heavenly imbued power to either decide the fate or destruction of the world or start it or something like that, I think is, like I said, getting kind of touched on here. And the idea that it's the hair is really interesting because there's all sorts of stuff with hair and coral in the series. And coral, growth, and grass being the same thing in Japanese kanji. I really think the idea of weeds and hair and all that on top of the earth, like being like the hair of the earth, is being played with in some form. And maybe that makes a new crust level or a new ocean floor level, and then there's a new whatever. But this idea of hair and weeds and growing out of control, and with how Momo looks at the end of this, I think there's a lot of things going on with this idea of not mindless growth, but almost like an automatic growth, like a need to keep growing, like hair or something like that, where it's not really like I said with the weeds, all these weeds and stuff, grow. Are they really do you have to kill them all and get rid of them in your garden more than other flowers? I don't know. To me, it's a direct parallel to the whole idea before with Nico Robin, that are you evil for just being born or just existing and all these things. To me, that entire argument could be simplified into, do you cut out all the weeds in your lawn just because they're weeds? And then I think this idea of hair is really touched on again at the end of the chapter with Marco taking on King and Queen. The idea that his blue flames end up being these feathers of the phoenix, obviously, but that kind of being a type of hair, and how much he's really able to control with that, it seems like. We saw earlier he was using them to heal people, but he seems to be able to make them physical to hurt people, and then he's able to transform his body. I mean, we know lots more about the mythical zones and how they can do parts of paramecias and parts of zone fruits and all this stuff, whatever. Really just interesting to me that he seems to very obviously be able to dictate his powers and stuff like that. And Marco, to me, looks like a devil fruit with his hair like that, the one that Buggy ate. And we even see that mink doctor kind of thing down there. There's lots of things going on here, but this idea that hair can be controlled maybe independently, or I'm not even quite 100% sure, but definitely that he's able to control this fire-like stuff way more than we've seen this connection from the hair from outside the body to a hair source seems to be relevant here. And with the idea that maybe Emu can influence and see and all these things with people, I really wonder if there's maybe instances where hair or fur or capes or hides or straw hats or all these things are kind of doing the same thing, kind of like the hair on the top of the head is controlling the body that it's connected to. Then we get Hirogoro of the flower deciding to end his life here, all this stuff to save everyone instead of keep going on his rampage. And then we, very obvious, another sword in the store in the stone thing, kind of, okay, power's been used, now it's sealed away again. I think is kind of a clue here. And then, the Nika eyebrows, Gear 5 eyebrows, and the Joy Boy smile and Yeti fangs and all that stuff, and the ice, I think, is very, very relevant for future stuff. And now for 1007, remember I mentioned earlier that I think there's lots of stuff going on with wishes and worship and power-ups and stuff like that. We know from the recent Laugh Tale that Luffy gains power from laughing. So I'm wondering if during maybe Wano, during all of this stuff, during the fight and Onigashima raid and all these things, that if maybe the smile fruit laughs in the background and throughout these laughs reverberating around the entire battle, if that was somehow affecting Luffy and giving him power in some form, and this idea of them maybe replacing and adding to each other, the grunts and everything, just weird kind of concepts like that. And then we do get a cannon that turns into smoke that to help people. It's the medicine, and it takes the form of Chopper, which I think it's always interesting when the smoke takes the form of whoever's using the smoke for something. Then he kind of wins his fight, not wins his fight, but gets Queen away from that moment. And then we get some highlights about Vegapunk using the lineage factor in Kaido, and that the fruit that Momo ate was ultimately deemed a failure. Now, I think that there's lots of things that are getting played with in the story, and one of them is the idea that this fruit's a failure, because I think that it's a failure because it doesn't have the limitation of making you not be able to swim if you eat it. Which, if you are the military or the Marines or the government, whatever, trying to regulate the weapons and have the strongest form of them, the best way to regulate your weapons would be to have a built-in weakness into those weapons. So making a fruit that did not have that weakness of being able to swim in water and all that stuff could be viewed as a failure for the Marines, since it doesn't have that kind of Achilles heel to utilize against it. Then we get Shinobu somehow influencing greatly the situation because she reveals Momonosuke's dragon form and all this stuff to Yamato, and just by calling him a brave young man. I get the impression a lot with Momo that he's a mama's boy, and this idea that the encouragement of his mother and kind of that trope, like maybe in like the way that it's kind of performed in the movie Psycho or something like that. I think Oda likes to do the same relationship in every single form it could take, good and bad, through different characters and stuff like that. And Momo being influenced by all these, a lot of maybe wolves in sheep's clothing. It hasn't popped off yet, I don't think, but it might be coming. But we are definitely, another clue to that here is, and look how surprised Shinobu looks, and right after it was deemed a failure and all these things it just kind of so happens that this Shinobu, don't her eyes look like those little things on the robots and all those things? So just an interesting little note.
Think I'm gonna be the scapegoat for the whole damn machine?
And the chapter ends with the Odin reveal, which I knew it wasn't Odin when it came out. I didn't really like this at first, but I do like the stuff that happens in the next chapter with kind of the ambush attack and how the sword is dull against a friend. I think those are all very cool messages and themes he's touching on with stuff and things he's setting up for later on that might be coming. But overall, though, this was probably one of the parts in Wano where I was like, oh, really? How many chapters are we gonna have the fake Kanjuro Odin thing? And then when Odin tries to blow himself up, Azura sacrifices himself, and we get after he's dead, we get another pretty, oh hey, look, there's a Sword in the Stone reference and this gravestone marker type deal. But I think that he uses these swords to represent a lot of stuff. An idea, though, of a grudge that's not yet over, but just kind of being maybe tacked under the surface, is I think what happens a lot with these sword references, and this is one of them for Ashura and fighting him and Kanjuro. And we also get some interesting stuff with the wishes here about wishing he was real and all these things. And then we get, Shinobu noticing another cool thing about Momonosuke, and this idea that he knows exactly what's happening with Luffy on the rooftop. To me, I haven't seen this anywhere, but like, they're obviously telepathic somehow, all these people, right? Like, when Luffy talks underwater later on and everyone openly questions how the fuck can we hear him, I think it's because he's telepathically communicating to these things. Now, I think it takes a lot of different forms and different shapes or whatever, but this idea that Momonosuke seems to be able to not maybe mind read, but at least be able to somehow be given the information from what Luffy is feeling or his brain or something, and is able to understand that and then regurgitate it to others, I think is a big sign there's something going on with telepathy. And then the little old lady Shinobu references like that's shocking, and we get what I think is ultimately a little Shadow King reference. Shout out to Parvision and his great shadow theories and stuff like that. One of the cool ones from that is when we in Thriller Bark, when we meet Hogback, his shadow has that same thing and it makes a shadow on the wall. So I think that it's a big thing referring to this Shadow King thing or whatever, and Shinobu noticing that these telepathy powers might be connected here, I think is a big deal here. And then we're back to the rooftop with everyone fighting and the attacks aren't working. And we finally get to see Kaido's hybrid form, at least one version of it before some design changes and stuff like that. Cool shot here. I really liked this shot, and really scary kind of Big Mom looking, Baba Yaga type looking stuff, and cool ending to a chapter. Then for chapter 1009, we get a pretty loaded cover page. I think one of the things that Oda does is the idea of bigwigs, and the idea that back in the past and revolutionary times and all that crap, the biggest person in Parliament and these rooms and jury rooms and all these things, courtrooms, lots of times the person that wore the biggest wig was who was in charge. And we see that with Roger's pirate hat, seems to be one of the bigger pirate hats, and Luffy's straw hat is obviously prominent. But everyone here, it seems like their hat might be dictating where they're going a little bit, and we see, Brook has the hidden skull, the hidden horn things and stuff. This idea that there's a living raccoon thing, tanuki, all this stuff, getting led to be eaten and drank by Zoro in some way, and that his left arm with that big cutoff mark that's always seems to be there by his upper shoulder, but that his one arm represents 3 swords maybe in some way. And then I know it sounds crazy that a lot of stuff might be connected to Tama and her powers unlocking in some form, but the hidden kind of golden lion Shiki type thing in the background has like dumpling ears. So to me, this like dawn might be bringing wishes and something good or bad come true at dawn. Is hinted at in this cover, and the idea that snow is a symbol for change and all these things, I really think it's just a sign that stuff is coming soon. And then for some reason there's even a hentai reference thing written there, I guess. Then the scabbards cut up Orochi, which I don't know. He never seems to be dead. I think he might be dead now, but to me, I did definitely not think he was dead from this moment. I mean, even the one main head we see, he's smiling. And then what ends up becoming, so far, the longest fight of the series, Fukurokuju and Raizo start their fight in this chapter. Then we get one of the coolest moments where Kaido and Big Mom combine for their ocean sovereignty attack. And to me, I think that might be a big clue to the sovereigns meeting, is this Earth, landlubber type sovereign, and the ocean sovereign, but I think that takes many forms and can be interpreted many different ways. And then we even get Zoro kind of getting in the middle of that, which I think is ultimately his goal, is to get in the middle of some of this stuff. But he does have a great moment here where he's able to block the attack a little bit for a little while. It's totally wrecked after this for a while, but he was able to block it, which is very, very strong to me, it seems. And then we get some Kaido and Luffy fighting each other, and if the signs that Ragnarok weren't enough starting already, Kaido's attack is called Ragnarok here. And it always surprises me with all these god names and stuff in One Piece. How did they know these god names? If all these gods came from like cultures in our world, what exactly is correlating in their myths where they would have the exact same names, type deal. And then the chapter ends with Zoro, using more of his flame slice stuff and fire cutting things. And that doesn't seem to hurt the souls, but it does seem to separate them. And then with Kid's powers, he's able to trap a thundercloud. Now, I know we just think his powers are magnets and all this stuff, but have you ever heard of a magnetic box being able to hold a cloud or a thundercloud in it? That seems to me to be a crazy application of that power that I've not really heard talked about very much. But, you know, he's able to do that in this chapter, and then the chapter ends on, you know, their plan kind of getting Big Mom off the top of the roof with her falling to the ocean starting. Then for the cover of chapter, 1010, Conqueror's Hockey, I think that it's a big clue that the idea that emotions and stuff might be tied to trees and growths and cake and eating and all these things hinted at with the cover. We cut to the Prometheus Cloud Flames trying to save Big Mom. And it is odd to me that Zoro's sword has been trying to cut Kaido and all this stuff, but has, for some reason, not cutting the fire on whatever spiritual level that this, energy resides in for the homie. It's almost, to me, very clearly indicated that there seems to be a big difference between being able to lock it up with magnetism and just being able to cut it up. It still seems to be able to function and just not form completely immediately, at least. And then Luffy's out again. We get Law and Kid kind of Law at least dealing with Kaido a little bit. And Zoro points out that Law was supposed to take care of the rest of the fire cloud. And the fact that he didn't, and he even looks away like he's lying while he says it, I think is an indication here that he did not want Big Mom falling at least where she fell at this moment. And I also really wondered too about the hats, back to the big wigs and stuff like that. Like once the hat, what's in control here? The hat or the cloud or all this stuff with Prometheus. And then we see the Azura Path again with Zoro do Farce of the Dead. I think in the Viz translation it's like Dead Men Tell No Tales or Dead Men Walking or something like that. It's able to hurt Kaido. And it does seem to be not just I'm not sure if just the Odin sword was able to cut him, because that is the one highlighted even going into the bubble. At least Kaido was able to be cut in some form here, it seems like. And it is confirmed that you have Conqueror's Hockey too, but like I said before, is this the sword or is this Zoro? I'm not sure. Then Law's kind of dealt with a Thunder Baguya. And then when Luffy's back up, he says to Kaido that the samurai are our friends and that I'm definitely going to send you flying. Now, like I said with this kind of wishing star idea with Luffy, what he says comes to fruition many times. Like it almost shapes reality sometimes. But I think it definitely goes along with actions with Luffy. The idea of what happened to maybe Kaido or where he is currently, maybe there's a great video by one of my friends, Den Kushi, and he has a video about what maybe happened with the Kaido and Big Mom and the volcano thing. And I think this is a very clear kind of hidden clue that they were shot up into the sky in the volcano for some part of the mix, or at least some part of them was shot up there. And then the chapter ends with Luffy finally showing off the kind of Conqueror's Hockey where there is no contact needed to connect with the attack, connects a few punches with Kaido, and he, instead of commanding, I guess, Momo telepathically, somehow subconsciously, he then just tells someone to relay the message, Tell everyone I've got this. Roger that. Will do. We'll tell everyone down there. And, be them no matter what. And that's going to do it for this review part one of the mega 50 chapter retrospective review, whatever, blah, 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 ending at chapter 1010. And there'll be a video out in a day or two, probably tomorrow. I'm trying to get a bunch of these out before the break ends. So my name is Amjin Rakai. If you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe to the video and comment, what you thought of it. And tell me what you thought of the review style. It's the first one I've done. I'm hoping these get a little quicker and more efficient. And obviously, when it's just doing one chapter a week, they'll be shorter. Let me know what you think of this in the comments, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.